Are about 245 prisoners still at America's most famous offshore prison at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Of those 245, the Bush administration has brought charges against 21 of them. That's it. Now that President Obama has ordered a review of all of the cases at Guantanamo, we are starting to learn the extent of the legal mess that the Bush administration has left behind there. The Washington Post reports yesterday that while reviewing prisoners' cases, quote, incoming legal and national security officials discovered that there were no comprehensive case files on many of them. And how could that happen? Quote, several former Bush administration officials agreed that the files are incomplete and that no single government entity was charged with pulling together all of the facts and range of options for each prisoner. The Bush administration's focus on detention and interrogation made preparation of viable prosecutions a far lower priority. So we have incomplete information on the prisoners who are still in U.S. custody at Guantanamo. Conveniently enough, however, Republicans who are still arguing to keep the prison open are using Pentagon claims that they have very specific information about what's happened to prisoners who have been released from Guantanamo. So the folks who are there, we don't know anything about them. The folks who have gotten out, we've got incredible dossiers. Michael Isikoff reports in Newsweek magazine that the Department of Defense is planning to release new details on 62 people it claims have returned to the, quote, battlefield after being released from Guantanamo. Even though, according to Professor Mark Denbeaux of Seton Hall, who joins us presently, the Pentagon doesn't even track prisoners released from Guantanamo. At least they don't in any way that makes sense. Professor Denbeaux's research shows that the Pentagon's lists accuse people of having returned to the battlefield on the grounds that they appeared in documentaries or wrote opinion columns for the New York Times. Those facts have not stopped Guantanamo's defenders from saying that if the prison is closed, dangerous terrorists will be loosed back onto the battlefield as a matter of course, or in fact, they may be loosed into your proverbial backyard. It was fear like this that allowed Guantanamo Bay to open in the first place, to continue to exist all these years through all of its criticism. Now, could that same fear keep it, or something very much like it, open into the future? Here to try to talk me down is Professor Mark Denbeaux. He's director of the Seton Hall Law School Center for Policy and Research. He wrote a detailed analysis tracking what happened to those Guantanamo prisoners who were released. Thanks for coming back on the show, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Your report shows that the Pentagon has not been able to conclusively or convincingly document what has happened to people who have left Guantanamo. We now have word that they're going to put out some brand new dossier about 62 prisoners. What's your reaction to that news?
Well, first of all, I've been hearing the promise that data will come out at some point from them, and they've never produced any. And the only documents they've ever produced have been on plain letterhead, no stationery, just plain paper.
Why does that make a difference that it's not on letterhead?
Well, I think there's no document ever produced by the Defense Department for which they can be held responsible for the information it contains. So they will put out a document with a list of names on it, many of which are people who were never in Guantanamo, others of which are there because, as you mentioned, they've written editorials or because they've been in documentaries. And the other problem I think that's significant is that when you look at the times in which they give it, they'll list some people and say, here's this person's name with this number, and they'll have two different detainees who have allegedly returned to the battlefield having the same internal security number. That is, there's two different names, one detainee, and they're both being counted as returning to the battle.
If one of the issues is that we don't know what part of the Pentagon, even what part of the government is producing this information, when you look at these various releases of information about Guantanamo prisoners who have gone and done these various alleged things, do you get the sense that they are coming out from different people who don't know what the previous releases have been?
Either they don't know or they never cared. I mean, the other possibility is they're just making up numbers. Each time they're now ratcheting it up as if they're trying to redefine the truth of Guantanamo. And what they're not willing to do is to prove their case against Guantanamo. It's as if they're afraid of proof, but they want to redefine the truth as it exists. So I think what we're really finding are different people trying to create an oral history for Guantanamo that will disguise the fact that they never had any proof. The files that are incomplete, surprisingly, because there's no evidence.
Yeah. You represent two Tunisian men who are in Guantanamo now, is that right?
That's
The contrast between these repeated releases of information about how dangerous the people are who have gotten out of Guantanamo, the contrast with that and what we know about the poor state of the case files for the prisoners who still languish at Guantanamo must be very frustrating to you as you try to do legal work on their behalf.
Well, it is certainly frustrating, but it's also important to understand that it's almost certainly false what they're saying about the files, in the sense that the first time they were required to collect their evidence was for our administrative tribunals in 2004. They now claim they got that wrong. Then they were required to submit responses to the habeas corpus petitions. They then determined in July of this year they didn't do that right. So in July of this year, they asked a federal judge to give them a third try to present their evidence. Over the objection of the habeas lawyers, saying 6 and 7 years was enough, he gave them 5 more months to re-amend their petitions. Those re-amended petitions for every single detainee were completed in December. There are 7 more finished the end of this month. So actually, the best case the government has for every detainee is already collected in the files. And the only possible thing you could say about that is if they swung and missed at the third strike, then they're also in contempt of court because they were ordered by the judge to get them all done in on time. So it's not possible that what's missing from those files is anything that could possibly be used against detainees.
What they've got, the mess that they've got, is the best they're going to get, and it's never going to get better. Mark Denbeaux, director of the Seton Hall Law School Center for Policy and Research. Thank you for your research. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.